Hey, what is up, everyone? Welcome back to another video. Kamen Rider Kuuga is probably my favorite Heisei era writer, and probably my second favorite writer, I should say, overall, after Kamen Rider Black. So seeing news like this, I think, is very well. For one, it's very exciting, although I will say it's a little bittersweet, right? Because this is not. Let me just put this disclaimer out there right in the very beginning here and say, this is talking about a Western release of Kamen Rider, not necessarily an English release of this manga. So I want to make that perfectly clear from the very beginning of this video so that you don't have the wrong idea as I read this article. Or if you clicked on this video thinking that that's what it was, let me just let you know right now that's not what it is. So for those of you that are disappointed, I apologize, but I hope you stick around and let me get through this article here and explain why I think that this is a good thing. So this is an article from Bounding Into Comics. I'll link it in the description below for those of you that want to go ahead and check it out, by our friend Spencer Bakuli, who does great, I think, work over there. So be sure to check out Bounding Into Comics. But it says Kamen Rider Kuuga Manga to see official Western release in 2022. So it says nearly 10 years since it began, the ongoing Kamen Rider Kuuga Manga will finally receive an official Western release. So you see a cover here for it. Then it says, as revealed by Team Kamen Rider, Bandai's official Kamen Rider outreach group, and Shout Factory, the home media company behind a number of Western Toku releases, including the upcoming Blu-ray collection of Kamen Rider 01, otherwise known as the first ever official Western release of a Kamen Rider series, during their November 27th San Diego Comic-Con 2021 special edition joint panel. The Kamen Rider Kuuga manga will begin English localization sometime in 2022, courtesy of Buenos Aires-based publisher Stonebot Comics. Okay, so just real quick to address what this says here. Now, this is the first official Western release on, Blu-ray, on that form of media, and we're not talking Western adaptions like Saban's Masked Rider, or which has never been released like on DVD or Blu-ray or anything like that. I don't even think, I can't recall. It might have been released on VHS back in the day, but I don't quote me on that. Because now that I think about it, it might not have even been released on VHS back in the day. But as we know, Kamen Rider Dragon Knight also was an adaptation of Kamen Rider Ryuki, but it was never released on any form of physical media. We never got DVDs, never got Blu-rays of it, and unfortunately, Kamen Rider Dragon Knight did get canceled literally one episode before it was set to end. So no actual physical mediums that it was released on. So this will be the first time that we see an actual Kamen Rider show that is just subtitled. Maybe they'll dub it also for its releases. It'll be the first, I guess, Kamen Rider series released in its original state, I guess you could say, over here, and that will be 01. So otherwise known as the first ever. Yeah. So let's go down here. It says an ongoing series penned by Takeuchi Inoue, Kamen Rider Agito, Kamen Rider Faiz, and illustrated by Hitetsu Yokoshima. The eponymously named Kamen Rider Kuuga series serves as a manga adaptation of both Kuuga and Kamen Rider Agito television shows, albeit with some slight changes made from the story's presentation. Which that's usually always the case when it comes to manga adaptations. There's always going to be variations, even with Shotaro Shinomori's own manga iterations of like Kamen Rider and stuff like that. There were some slight changes and differences in the way certain things were presented. He did it with the Super Sentai manga as well. Just some things here and there. I mean, overall there was a lot of similarities, but there was also quite a bit of differences. So. First beginning publication in 2014, the series is set to release its 18th volume next month on December 7th. So it says here's the first Rider series of the Heisei era. Kamen Rider Kuuga followed the adventures of the carefree Yusuke Godai, a young man with a mysterious connection to an ancient race known as the Rintu, as he harnessed the power of the Rintu warrior Kuuga to protect humanity from the murderous Grongi, who routinely killed humans for fun and sport. Yeah, if you guys have never seen Kamen Rider Kuuga, I thought it was a fantastic start to the Heisei era, especially a lot of those early Heisei era shows are very dark. It's especially Kuuga and Agito. Faiz, I would say, to a little bit of a lesser extent, is also a dark series. Although, you know, it's again, I guess it depends on how you want to look at it. I mean, they are kid shows at the end of the day, but they're a lot of those ones, and even Ryuki to a certain extent, I would say, was a little bit darker than, say, something that came a little bit later, like maybe Gaim or well, Gaim does get pretty dark too. What am I talking about? But some of the other shows, I'll say maybe like Den-O. Den-O was a little bit more of a light-hearted, feel-good kind of Kamen Rider show, nowhere near as dark as, say, something like Agito or Kuuga, and I think that's where things really kind of started to shift for the series, where you saw a little bit more slapstick and humor introduced into the shows, and they became much more colorful as opposed to the gritty tone that a lot of these early series had, which in my opinion made them great. And if you recall, especially with Kuuga and Agito, Kuuga and Agito, they go one into the other, because Agito is a bit of, and I think they say it in this article, Agito is a bit of a sequel, a kind of a loose sequel. Its story is self-contained, but it does reference things that happened and things from Kuuga. So it's a bit of a loose sequel, but like I said, it's its own self-contained story. So as of writing, an official release date for Stonebot Comics English translation has not been announced. In addition to translating Kamen Rider Kuuga, Stonebot Comics will also be producing a series of new comic books and graphic novels set within the world of Kamen Rider 01. So this is good news in the sense that it's making its way over to this side of the world, and hopefully with things like the release of 01 on physical media, that will start to garner interest. I mean, we've seen with Ultraman, especially in the I would say in the last couple years, Ultraman has really started to garner a lot more interest from people, and has been a way for people to it opens the door for fans or for people to really come into Tokusatsu, right? If they're not fans of, say, like Power Rangers or something, right? It provides them another means to be exposed to Tokusatsu. We've seen, an Ultraman Marvel comic. We know that Ultraman has been released a lot on DVD and Blu-ray for the last several years. So there's definitely a renewed interest. The Netflix series, which is based on the manga, which the manga, the Ultraman manga is pretty good. So we have all these ways of people being introduced to that could also bring them into Kamen Rider and things like that by extension. So I think it's a good thing. And even though we're not getting an English translated release, I'm sure that with enough time, you're going to see more of a demand grow for that, especially when you have official releases of Kamen Rider coming out over here. I think you're going to start to see a demand for more Kamen Rider related stuff. So this is all good. I think it's great. Like I said, it sucks that we're not getting an English translated release of it, but who knows? In time, that could change, and I hope it does, because I would love to read the Kamen Rider Kuuga manga over here. Like I said, I've read the Ultraman manga. I think it's great. Haven't watched. I've only seen like the first 2 episodes of the Netflix series. Haven't got a chance to really delve into that to see how closely they followed the manga, but the manga is fantastic, and it's interesting because it seems like within the last couple years, Ultraman has really picked up in popularity, and it's something that's been around since as far back as the original series. It got released over here, but it was something that was very, very niche and was not really all that well known. But within the last, like I said, I would say within the last maybe 5 to 10 years, it's really, specifically, I would say probably the last 5 or 6 years, it's really started to pick up quite a bit. So I'm very interested to see if the same thing can happen with Kamen Rider. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. As always, until next time, y'all know how it goes. The hunt continues.